Hi everyone, it's Tim here. So Octopus have done it again. I was due to do a different video this week, but then they went and released a new tariff called Intelligent Octopus Flux, and obviously this seemed very interesting, so I dropped that other video idea and thought I'd better do this one instead. So what is Intelligent Octopus Flux? Well, this is the webpage where you can sign up to join the waiting list. It's effectively a bit like the existing Flux tariff, except rather than controlling it yourself, you basically hand over control of your battery to Octopus and they do all of the charging and discharging on your behalf. So the idea behind this is that when there's plentiful energy, for example overnight, if there's lots of wind, Octopus will charge up your battery, and then at peak times when there's a lot of demand on the grid, Octopus will discharge your battery to help meet that demand. So it means that you don't have to set up charging schedules or discharging schedules. They'll do all that for you, and basically try and optimize it so that it balances everything on the grid a little bit better than it's able to without this sort of tariff. The other thing to take a look at is the press release that they released at the same time as that webpage where you can sign up, and this has some more details. It's got the tariff, for example, down here. There we go, roughly 27.1 pence during the day and 36.1 pence at the peak time. So I think this tariff is going to be perfect for those people who just want to let things happen, who don't want to be too involved in managing their own charging and discharging, and they're happy to let Octopus get on and do that sort of stuff. So this is the sort of tariff that I think would be ideal for the general wider audience, people who aren't quite as engaged as perhaps the viewers of this channel and myself. I think this might be the sort of future of smart tariffs. Just plug in your battery, set up your tariff, and away you go. So I'm not going to go into the full details about this particular tariff because DanEVSolar has already covered all of the gory details in his video, Intelligent Octopus Flux, that you can see on his YouTube page here. I'll drop a link to that in the description. But what I am going to do is take the new Intelligent Octopus Flux tariff and apply it to the last 2 months of my own data to see how it compares to the current Flux tariff that I'm on right now. And of course, since the Flux tariff actually changed recently, I'm going to apply the current Flux tariff to those last 2 months of data as well. So we're comparing like with like. Just to give you a comparison of what the two tariffs look like, this is the standard current Flux tariff in the orange and the blue, and you can see that we have actually two tariffs. We've got an import tariff, which is this orange line, and also the export tariff, which is this blue line. And you can see we have a sort of dip overnight between 2 and 5 a.m. and that's where they're expecting you to sort of charge up your EV or charge up your battery, for example. And then you have this peak period here between 4 in the afternoon and 7 in the evening, where the prices of both the import and the export are higher, and that's when they're expecting you to export any excess that you've built up in your battery or excess solar or whatever, and you get not only a very good export rate, but you do get a very high import rate. So they want to encourage you to export rather than import, of course. Now, the new Intelligent Octopus Flux has a flat tariff all the way through the day, so it doesn't have this dip in the early morning, but you can see that flat tariff is lower than the import tariff for the standard Flux for most of the day. And then it also has a peak period between 4 and 7, like the standard Flux tariff, but it's sort of in between the import and the export of the standard Flux. But the interesting thing about Intelligent Flux is that there is only one tariff. It's both the import and the export tariff, that you get the same price for importing and exporting. And that makes it very interesting because it means that it doesn't matter whether you charge your battery or discharge your battery during this period, because it'll basically work out to be the same. But you can charge at any point during the day and then you can export it during the peak period. But you get a much higher export rate than the standard Flux tariff. So for people who have a lot of excess solar that they can store in their battery and then export during this time, this should result in a better overall saving for you. Because even though this period here overnight, the import is obviously a lot higher than the overnight import from the standard Flux tariff, I'm willing to bet that extra excess solar is going to give you a much better benefit by exporting during the peak period than in the standard Flux tariff. Now, I'm quite a heavy exporter. This house has a very large array. You can go and see some of my other videos to see what our setup is like. So I'm willing to bet that Intelligent Flux is going to work out pretty well for us, certainly in the summer. But let's take a look at the numbers and see what it really shows. So for those of you who have been watching my previous stats videos, this is my typical usage in May. You can see during the overnight period I was importing a lot, so that's charging the EV, heating hot water and filling the battery a little bit. And then during the day, obviously this is all excess solar, which is being exported. And I was force exporting the battery for about 1 hour between 6 and 7. Now in June, I slightly changed my, my behavior. And so I was still doing the charging up overnight, but now I was exporting for 2 hours during the peak period, so between 5 and 7. So you can see that's shown by this slightly thicker chunk of export during this period here. So what I'm going to do is, and you can see here I've also got the import and the export tariff for the standard Flux sort of retrofitted. So this is the current Flux tariff applied to my historical May and June data, just for clarity. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what happens when I use the standard, the new Intelligent Flux tariff instead. Okay, so in the top part of this table here, you can see my import and export in kilowatt hours for May and June. So nearly 400 kilowatt hours of import in May and 750 kilowatt hours of export, whereas I imported about 370 kilowatt hours in June, but exported 811. So in the next table down, you can see this was effectively my Octopus bill for each of those 2 months. In May, I received a payout of £82.88, and for June, I received a payout of £106.46 on the standard Flux tariff, or I would have done if the tariff had been what it currently is now. Actually, it was slightly higher back then, but if the tariff had been what it is now, then that would have been what I would have received from Octopus. However, if I apply the new Intelligent Flux tariff to that data instead, I would have received £103 in May and £132 in June. So that's about £20 to £25 more paid back to me if I had been on Intelligent Flux. Now, I think this is because I've got such high export, which means that that extra high export period during the early evening more than outweighs the fact that the import rate is higher for the off-peak period. So that sort of confirms my hunch that a high export system would certainly be beneficial to move on to Intelligent Flux compared to the standard Flux tariff. This is, of course, assuming there's a lot of caveats here. It's assuming that Octopus would manage the battery in a similar way to me. So there's absolutely no guarantees that that's going to be the case. But it's the best I can do at the moment. But let's say, for example, that they decided to charge the battery and discharge it much less than I'm doing, then I imagine that benefit would reduce. And maybe if they decided to fully discharge the battery for the full 3 hours, then maybe that would increase the amount of benefit I would get from being on Intelligent Flux. But honestly, at this stage, we don't know at all how they're going to be managing the battery. So these are very much guesses on my part. So take a lot of this with a huge pinch of salt. I've signed up for Intelligent Flux, so assuming that I can make use of it, within the next couple of months, we'll see how it actually operates in practice, and then I'll hopefully be able to answer these questions in a bit more detail. But then I thought, well, okay, we obviously heat our hot water overnight and we charge our EV, which means that we do import a decent fraction of what we use, as you can see from the top table there. But what if we use the EV a lot more? We're actually quite low users of the EV. We only use about 100 kilowatt hours per month. But let's say we used it more than twice as much as we currently do. So what I thought I would do is I would add 250 additional kilowatt hours to the overnight charging period to see what difference that would make to the two tariffs. So of course, in the standard Flux tariff, all of that import would be at the much lower rate, between 2 and 5 in the morning, whereas with Intelligent Flux it would be at that sort of standard flat rate during the day, and it could happen obviously any time during that day. So that changes the picture a little bit. So you can see in that bottom table there, for the standard Flux tariff, I would have received £38 in May and £62 in June, whereas in Intelligent Flux I would have received £35 in May and £64 in June. So that brings them almost into alignment. So essentially, if you've got to find your own balance, right? So if you've got an EV as well as a solar array and battery system, then you might want to take a look at your data and decide for yourself whether or not you think moving on to Intelligent Flux would be the right thing for you, because losing that really sort of low off-peak period means that you can't charge your car at the cheapest rate. So if, like me, you actually use your EV not a huge amount, then probably you might want to move on to Intelligent Flux. But if you're a heavy EV user, then you probably want to stick to the regular Flux, or maybe even Octopus Go or Intelligent Octopus, which was obviously the first attempt that they made at managing people's usage by controlling when people can charge their EVs. So this is obviously an extension of that idea to battery systems instead. So yeah, I think for us, moving on to Intelligent Flux would be the right thing. If you're a heavy EV user, I suggest maybe doing your own sums. Certainly don't take my word for it. Absolutely do your own calculations. Please do not just jump on it because I've told you to. I'm not telling you to, just to be absolutely clear. But yeah, if you found this useful and you're thinking of switching over to either Flux or Intelligent Flux, and you're not already on Octopus, I've got a referral code which you can find down in the description, or wait to the end of the video and you'll see a link on the screen. And if you signed up for Octopus, then you'll get £50 credit when you sign up, and I'll also receive £50 credit. So it's a win-win for everyone. So I'd certainly appreciate if you do that. Otherwise, if you found this video interesting or useful and you're not already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and all that stuff. But yeah, that's it for me today. Hopefully you found that interesting, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.